Hello, my name's Cody and I want to thank you for stopping by today. So one of the questions I get asked most often, especially this time of year as we start to approach spring, has to do around tomatoes and starting tomatoes from seed. So today I want to kind of work just a little bit more focused on how to demystify starting tomatoes from seed. It's really not that difficult to do, but it seems to be the number one question or comment or concern that I get this time of year. Either tomato seeds, they fail, they don't germinate very well, or you just run into problems in general. So today I'm going to go and I'm going to plant, I think it's 26 different varieties of tomatoes, and I'm going to go from the beginning right through to setting them up to start germinating, just to kind of give you a little bit behind the scene looks here at how I get my tomatoes to germinate. So hopefully you can pick something up from the way that I do it. But yeah, without any further ado, let's just jump into it here and let's start planting some tomatoes. One of the first considerations when you want to start out with your own tomato seedlings is going to be the temperature of the soil that you're planting the seeds in. Typically, I find tomatoes, they germinate really their best when the soil temperature is between 21 and 27 degrees Celsius. So if you think about the ambient air temperature in your house, we like to keep it a little bit colder out, like at 16 degrees. So if you try to germinate your tomatoes in that 16 degrees Celsius range, you might run into some trouble. They might be slow to germinate, they might end up getting waterlogged and start to rot. But so again, keep in mind the soil temperature is super important when you're going to start your tomato seeds. Like I say, 21 to 26 degrees Celsius, I think that's 70 to 80 Fahrenheit is what you're looking for. So that's one of the first considerations, and I think that's really one of the biggest stumbling blocks that people run into when they start to grow their tomatoes from seed, is that the soil temperature, not the air temperature, but the temperature of the soil itself is a little bit too cold for them. So once you start thinking about proper soil temperature, the next thing that you want to jump into is what kind of potting medium you're going to use for your tomato seedlings. I like to use a pre-mixed potting mix. It's very fine, it's very fluffy, it holds moisture really, really well, so that's really good for the tomato seedlings, but it doesn't hold so much moisture that they stay wet and soggy. The second problem I find most people run into with their tomato seedlings is that they overwater. And what ends up happening then is that your tomato seedling will actually start to rot if they're going to sit in water for too long. So you want a really nice draining but well moisture retaining potting mix. So I wouldn't use like garden soil, for example. Something that you want peat based, which is really good. You get some vermiculite in there, that's also a really good thing to get in there. And then when you're filling up your little cell trays here, you just fill it in nice and light, like so. There we go, and you're all set. So I don't really pack them down too much. Maybe just give them a little tap to firm up any of the loose spots in there. Maybe pack in some of the air spots, but you don't want to pack it in there so tight. You want to make sure that the seedling has an easy time to get the roots down into the mix, as well as to push up through the top of the soil medium there. So a nice light and fluffy soil mixture is ideal for them, and pack it in just a little bit, not too much. When you're planting any seed, it's always a good idea just to keep in your mind that the depth at which you want to plant that seed is roughly 2 to 5 times the actual width of the seed. So all that means is, say you have a 1 centimeter or 1 inch seed, depending on what you want to go with as the analogy, you're going to want that seed to be either 2 to 5 centimeters or 2 to 5 inches deep, if that makes sense. They're not very big at all. They're maybe like a centimeter across. So you're not going to want to go deeper than 5 centimeters, but you also don't want them to be shallower or more shallow or closer to the surface than 2 centimeters. So somewhere between that 2 to 5 centimeter range in the potting medium. That's going to give the seedling a really good chance to root in and get nice strong roots into the soil. And it's also going to make sure that it doesn't have to struggle too much, to waste so much energy. If you were to plant it at, say, the bottom of the cell way down here, it's going to have to expend a lot of its energy just getting up to the top here so the leaves can come out. So you want it somewhere kind of right in there. Not too deep, and in the Goldilocks zone, we'll say. Not too deep, not too shallow. So just to give you an idea here, I'm going to take my seeds. I only need 9 of them. You can see them there. They're super tiny, and they also look a lot like additives in there, so it can be hard to keep track of them. So just pay attention when you're dropping the seeds on the soil. Like that. I always try to aim for the middle. That way when I'm going back to put the seed in, I have a pretty good general idea as to where I should be looking. And of course you're not always going to get 100% in the middle, but that's okay. Okay, there's my 9. I'm going to put the rest back in the package. Okay, now tomato seeds are very small and I think they're quite fragile. So sometimes when you're going to push them in, I would not put right on the seed there. I don't know if that's going to focus or not. If you push right on the seed and there's something hard behind the seed, you might end up damaging it. So what I do is I come just in front of the seed and I push down, and the seed is going to fall into that little pocket that I've created. And then I can just gently pack the soil in around it like that. And then that way you save the risk of damaging your seed, and you get it kind of right back in the middle where you want it. You create a little divot for it to fall into. There's that seed. And like I say, you don't have to push directly on the seed, which could be another hang-up that some people might end up having. If they're pushing them in, maybe they're, like I say, squishing the seed, which can obviously prevent it from growing if it's dead. There we go. Let's go real quick here. Get them back in there. So there we go. 9 seeds all poked in there. I hope that's in focus for you guys. But yeah, super simple to do. Like I say, you don't want to put pressure directly on the seed. Come just below the seed, push under the seed at an angle, and that's going to create a little pocket underneath the seed that it'll fall into. You can pull back your dibbler, and then the seed will fall into that hole, and then just gently pack in around it. Then after, what I like to do just to lock the seeds into place is give them a little bit of a squirt. That way, if one of the greenhouse fans comes and pushes a gust of wind over the seeds, they're not going to go away with the loose topsoil or potting mix here. They're nice and locked into place until I can get them on the rack with a humid dome over top of it, and get them some actual water. So right now, just spraying the top isn't going to be enough for watering. There's still obviously no moisture at pretty much the seed level. I just spray them to lock in that top layer so that they can't be blown away easily. So after we get all of the seeds put in the soil, so they're all seeded in there, the last thing to do is to give them a good watering. Typically, you're not going to have to water them too much while they're germinating, so just make sure that the entire soil medium that they're in is saturated, but not wet. So imagine if you were to grab a bunch of the soil and wring it out, no water should come out of it. You want it moist but not wet, if that makes sense. And the easiest way for me, or that I found to do that, is to do bottom watering. So I'll pull out one cell here, come over to my pail, and I'll get 1 scoop of water here. It's about 3 cups. It doesn't matter the amount right now. And I pour that into the bottom of the tray. There we go. Now these nursery pots, they've got drainage holes on the bottom there, and that allows water to come through, but it also allows water to come up if you do bottom watering like this. So there's about maybe 1/4 inch of water in the bottom of this tray right now. I'm going to put this one back in there. Now what that's going to do is the soil, or the soilless medium rather, is going to start absorbing that water, and it's going to carry it all the way up through the cell, and it eventually will encase the seedling. So when we were poking them in, we made sure that the soil was fully contacting the seedling, and now the water is going to come up and it's going to moisten that mix, and it's going to make sure that the casing of the seed is going to be fully moist. Like I say, we don't want it to be soggy, but we don't want it to be dry. There's a really fine middle, like the Goldilocks zone there again. So I'm going to give that a few minutes just to soak up there. So now that the water has had a chance to absorb up, you can kind of just lift up the tray, and you'll get a feel for it after a while as to what a nice fully moistened soil tray feels like. So just give it a little lift, and it feels about the right weight there. So I'm going to check this every day or so just to make sure that it's not completely drying out, but also that it's not going to be too heavy. This shouldn't be heavy to pick up, and if it is, maybe there's just too much water. The last thing that you're going to want to do for the seedlings is add a humidity dome here. It's just a clear plastic dome that goes over the entire tray, and that'll do 2 things. It'll stop any evaporation from escaping the soil there, so it's going to cut down on your watering. It's also going to keep everything a little bit warmer because you're not going to have a lot of heat loss. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So once the soil has been properly moistened, add your humidity dome, and I'm going to go take it over to the rack there and finish up. There we go. So here is our tray. It's got the humidity dome, it's just been watered, and they're ready to go on the rack here. So I'm going to just slide it in there, nice and gently. So you can see we got our 4 trays all there with the tomato seeds been seeded. They've been watered, they all have the humidity dome on. One thing that I don't have on here that I'd recommend if you're growing in home is a heat mat. That'll just sit under your seedling tray here, and you plug it in and you can turn the thermostat up there, and that'll create a little bit more warmth for your seedlings. I keep the germination room or the grow room here pretty warm anyway, so we still achieve that around 25 degrees Celsius soil temperature, and that's really what you're after there. The biggest hang-up that I think people run into is the soil temperature is too cold or they water too much. So just try to keep an eye on those two things. The biggest one, definitely soil temperature. That'll really affect the germination rates and the quality of the seed as it germinates. The other thing is if they get too much water or not enough water. Causes two very different problems, but the end result is still the death of the seed. So you want to keep an eye on those things too. Now that they've got their humidity domes on, I don't really plan on ever watering them again until they start to break dormancy and they need that moisture. The moisture that's in there right now is just to make sure that the seed casing softens up and allows the seed to wake up. Now they're not really drawing much moisture right now, so any extra water that we put in there is just probably going to be damaging to the seedling. So just keep that in mind. Yeah, that's pretty much it. So it's super simple. I think sometimes people just get in their head a little bit too much about seeding tomatoes. Don't be too hard on yourself. You know, nobody is going to get 100% on these sorts of things. And it's all about learning and trying to grow from things that you may have failed at in the past. And that's perfectly okay. That's a good thing to do. If you're not making mistakes, then it means that you're not growing, right? So yeah, I think I'm going to leave it there. If you have any questions about this, feel free to leave them in the comments below. Go ahead and let me know if you have any questions or problems or that. If you want to know the varieties that we did, ask too there. I'm not going to do it if nobody's interested, but if you want to know what we planted today, feel free to let me know and I can get a list put together there for you. But that's pretty much it. So yeah, just a quick little video on how I germinate my tomatoes. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. But whatever it is that you get up to for the rest of the day, guys, have a great day. And until next time, take care. Bye now.